Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Portion Perfection Professional Weight Management series, where we bring you strategies from the best minds in the industry. Now, my goal is not only to provide you with the best tools that embody all I know about weight management in the form of portion perfection, but to also let you in on all the surrounding strategies that help you to follow through or that might actually be the cause of any difficulties you might be experiencing. Today, we're going to talk about mindset, and this really is the key to getting anything done in life. Today, I welcome Amber Kay, who is a certified mindset coach with over 25 years experience and a background in psychology and coaching. Amber, are you out there? Hi.
Hello, good evening, Amanda, and good evening, everybody. So lovely to be here tonight.
Yeah, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. You know, there's been a lot of chatter in anticipation of this session, which tells me that it's really going to be a valuable one for listeners. So I really appreciate this. Yeah.
No, awesome. I'm so pleased to be here to talk about this particular topic because often it can be underestimated, the impact of it. Often we talk about when we want to create change, it's like, okay, figure out your goal, then figure out your reason why, and then figure out the actions. And I would argue that maybe this piece, getting clear on your limiting beliefs and changing what's going on between your ears, that's the piece that should be at step number 3 to support those actions. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you tonight.
Priceless. Excellent. So by way of introduction, Amber is the co-author of the book, Get Back on Track After Your Weight Loss Surgery. And I think we both want to point out that if you haven't had weight loss surgery, don't be put off by the book title, because mindset and getting back on track applies to all weight management and, in fact, all of life. Amber's focus is on identifying disempowering habits and behaviour patterns and helping people to realise their true potential and their weight loss goals. Let's share screen and I'll hand over to you, Amber.
Thank you so much. So yeah, I do absolutely want to reiterate what Amanda just said. All of this content that I want to share with you tonight is relevant for anyone who wants to have more impact on their choices in terms of weight management, health management, and also any other area of your life. These are the principles that I apply still in my life, 13 years down my sort of coaching journey. I haven't had weight loss surgery, and I also use these principles to create the changes that I want to in terms of the meaningful changes that I'm looking for. So this topic is really, really important in terms of, I really want to impart to you tonight, firstly, why it's important and why we need to be aware of our limits, also known as our limiting beliefs, but more importantly, have the choice and be able to exercise the choice in whether we keep hold of them or not. So firstly, I want to say we all have limits. I'm not saying we are limitless. We all have limits. So for example, we might have physical limits. We all need oxygen to survive. We all need some assistance to fly, which is why I've got my little super dog here. I have a limit in terms of my height, for example. I need tall people to help me reach things in the supermarket shelves sometimes. And then we also have other limits. So we have other limits that we choose or subscribe to, or we impose upon ourselves. And these tend to be beliefs about ourselves or the world or certain areas of our lives that we've consciously or unconsciously chosen. And this is important because we are walking around living our lives, and there's a power that these beliefs and these thoughts, if you like, are imparting on our results, because there's an actual formula that translates to what's going on between our ears in our inner world to what we're experiencing in our outer world. And it's that our thoughts create our feelings determine our actions, and our actions basically create our results. So where our beliefs fit in is in that thoughts piece. And it depends on what we believe is true or possible for ourselves. So, for example, if I have a belief, a thought that I am lazy, then that's going to generate particular emotions. Emotions maybe of apathy, boredom, probably demotivation, not particularly energized. And from those emotions, I'm going to be taking particular actions. For example, I might talk myself out of going for a walk or meal prepping, or I might choose comfort and pleasure rather than leaning into the challenge and the initial discomfort that is there when we're creating a healthy lifestyle, or that when we're changing our habits. Those actions then are going to create particular results. Compare that though to if I have a belief, the thought that I am unstoppable. And you imagine what kind of feelings I'm going to be having if I have that belief of I am unstoppable. I'm going to be feeling maybe motivated, determined. I might be feeling excited about what's ahead of me. And in that frame, from those emotions, I'm going to then be inspired to take particular actions that are going to support me to get more of the results that I want and less of the results that I don't want. Now, I trust this is making sense so far. Please put an emoji in there, or put a yes in the chat if it's making sense. I really want to encourage you to, let me know how you're going. Let me share your insights, your reflections, your learnings, because that's going to serve everyone else as well. So what we're going to be covering tonight, I have to be really efficient with my time because there's so much I want to go through with you. Firstly, I'll be sharing a little bit about how our minds work, just for what's relevant for this session. Awesome. Thank you, Tracy, for that thumbs up. Then we're going to be looking at what are some of your current beliefs about yourself, and are they limiting you or lifting you? Are they helping you stay trapped in a story? Are they causing you to sabotage yourself? Or are they actually giving you the freedom, giving you the opportunity to move more easily and faster towards the life and the health that you want? We're then going to get into a few ways to change your self-beliefs, and I'm going to be guiding you to apply some of these strategies in this session so you get to experience the difference. And there's also some bonus resources that Amanda is going to be giving you access to, and I'll refer to them a little bit later. So, why is this important? Well, our beliefs about ourselves and the world impact whether we take action towards our goals. When our self-beliefs aren't setting us up for success, so for example, I'm a failure, I'm a yo-yo dieter, I'm lazy, or I'm always going to struggle with my weight, or something like that, that's going to limit our choices. That's going to mean that we stop ourselves from taking action, and we can trap ourselves in these self-fulfilling prophecies where what we believe becomes true because of the way that our minds work. And I'll talk later about why that happens. What can also happen is that we can find ourselves pulling in one direction consciously and unconsciously, where my thoughts reside, and my thoughts are determining my feelings, then my actions, then my results. Unconsciously, I might be pulling in a different direction. This is why I've got this dog here. If you've ever walked a dog that wants to go in one direction and you want to go in the other, there's that tension where you're both pulling in the opposite direction. And when your unconscious mind and your conscious mind are pulling in opposite directions, that's when we slow our progress or we go backwards. Now, our unconscious mind is so much more powerful than our conscious mind. And so when our unconscious mind wants something different, or we unconsciously want something different to what we want consciously, it will act like a handbrake on a car and will slow our progress and go backwards. Now, if we're also feeling uncomfortable emotions because of the thoughts and the limiting self-beliefs that we're having, so uncomfortable emotions like sadness, anger, fear, then what can happen is we can use strategies to distract ourselves from those emotions, or we can use strategies to suppress those emotions. And using food is one of the most common ways to do that. It's one of the most common ways that humans will do that, whether they've had weight loss surgery or not. And, send an emoji if you can relate. I think so many of us have eaten for emotional reasons. And this is because food is a really easy tool for us to either move towards pleasurable emotions that we want to feel, like comfort, like happiness, and or away from emotions that we don't want to feel. Now, I want to emphasize here that there are no kind of good or bad, positive, negative emotions. They're all healthy emotions in the sense that emotions can be feedback. They're information to let you know that there's sometimes a disconnect or a match between what you expect to experience and what you're actually experiencing. Okay. But what happens is that some emotions are more enjoyable to experience than others. So maybe a hands up or a yes if you've ever experienced emotional eating or eaten to suppress your emotions, because I 100% guarantee you are not alone. On the flip side, though, with this thoughts, feelings, actions, result sort of equation, we can experience an upward spiral, this upward spiral of confidence and enthusiasm and determination when our beliefs about ourselves are positive and supportive and nurturing, because we believe in ourselves. We believe in ourselves and what's possible for us. And then we can feel confident about ourselves. We feel confidence in ourselves. Tracy says, so true. I've lost 40 kilos, amazing, after bypass surgery, and now hit a plateau. Feel a lot of it is due to the fact that I'm at the lowest weight I've ever achieved from past dieting, and I don't believe I can lose more. I'm still 15 to 20 kilos from my goal weight. So Tracy, really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, because I trust that after tonight, you might have some different beliefs about what's possible for you. So thank you so much for sharing, and congratulations on your progress so far. Also, when our thoughts are supporting the kind of behaviors that we want as part of our healthy and ongoing lifestyle, then those repeat behaviors become habits. So every time we repeat a behavior, if it works for us, if we get a payoff on some level, then it creates a neural pathway. And every time we do that behavior and experience that payoff, it reinforces that neural pathway. And so those repeat behaviors become habits. And our habits are automatic. We don't have to think about them. We don't have to remember to do them. It's like brushing our teeth. We don't think about how to brush our teeth generally. We don't even have to remember or remind ourselves to do it. That's just who we are. It's something we do. We brush our teeth at least once a day. And so when you have wonderful, nurturing, resourceful beliefs about yourself, and they're underpinning the actions that you're taking regularly and the habits that you're creating for your lifestyle, it actually becomes easier. It becomes easier and more automatic to have a habit of ignoring the lollies at the checkout, or the habit of going for a daily walk, or the habit of using your portion perfection tools with each meal and each snack to make sure you're being consistent and supporting yourself, or a habit of going to bed before 10 p.m. on the weeknights, for example, and so on. So is this making sense so far? Please share your insights. Please continue to share your aha moments, your reflections. I'd love to read them. We're also setting our mindset up for success when we make sure that our conscious mind is going this way and our unconscious mind is going in the same direction, rather than pulling in opposite directions. It means that we're aligned. Both parts of our mind are pulling in the same direction, which is when the magic happens. That's when the power really happens. And that will transform the results that you're getting. Now, why might we find ourselves in a situation where consciously we want something, but unconsciously we actually want to go in the opposite direction? Well, usually it's because on an unconscious level, we might have attached some pain to the idea of achieving that goal. It could be any kind of pain, because unconsciously we'll make assumptions and determinations based on what we have experienced in the past, what we're telling ourselves, what we're focusing on. So, for example, I might consciously want to achieve a particular health goal, but unconsciously, I want to go in the opposite direction because maybe I'm being pushed in the opposite direction because I'm associating into all the pain of the work that is going to take to get there, or how long it's going to take to get there, or what I have to give up. You know, some of my favorite things, perhaps, or maybe some of my favorite people, or some of my favorite activities. I might associate that I've got to give up some of those things in order to achieve my goal. So that's painful. So I'm going to move in the opposite direction. Or it could be around an identity I have. For example, if I have an identity of I'm the person in my family with the weight problem, and unconsciously that meets my needs for love and attention and belonging, then if I achieve that weight goal or that health goal, I won't be the person in the family with the weight problem anymore. And unconsciously, that feels like a threat. How will I get love and approval if I'm not that person anymore? So unconsciously, I'll pull in the opposite direction. So I trust that makes sense. We want to make sure our conscious mind and our unconscious minds are aligned, and I'll talk more about that shortly. So what's going on here? Well, it's because the most powerful force in the human psyche, or one of, but my belief and my experience with my clients is that the most powerful force in the human psyche is our need for our words and our actions to be consistent with how we define ourselves. So put simply, we like to prove ourselves right. So if I have a belief about myself, I will act in ways that are consistent and aligned with that belief. So for example, I used to have a belief that I didn't have a very good memory. I had a terrible memory and that I couldn't trust my memory. And so because I held on to that belief for decades, I would do behaviors to reinforce that. So I would make sure that I had to have everything written down. I had constant alarms set to remind me to do things because otherwise I would forget. If I was talking to my husband about places and travel, I would say, have I been there? And he who has a really good memory would tell me where we'd been and what we'd done and so on. And I would be like, oh, I don't remember that. And this is because I wanted to prove myself right. I had to have evidence of my lack of good memory. But as you'll see in a moment, my unconscious mind actually has an amazing memory. My unconscious mind remembers everything. It's all there, but it's delivering to me what I'm telling it to. So let's now get into a little bit about how our minds work. So you might have seen this analogy before as the mind as an iceberg. And it's a simplified analogy, but it works really, really well for this purpose. And this is because with an iceberg, you have what's above the water that you're aware of, which is usually a mass of a particular size. And yet under the water, there's an even bigger mass that we are unaware of, that we can't see if we're above the water. And the minds are similar. So our conscious mind, which is basically anything that we are consciously aware of in this moment, is responsible for around 3 to 10% of your kind of mental power, if you like. So for example, right now you might be consciously aware of me on the screen, my voice. You might be conscious of how comfortable you are in your seat, the temperature in the room, perhaps maybe a taste in your mouth or some smells that are surrounding you. And probably maybe not much else until something makes you need to be conscious of it. You're also going to be conscious of any thoughts, feelings, emotions, memories, ideas that you're aware of right now. Okay. Now, interestingly, the conscious mind is where we consciously accept or reject thoughts. Okay. So what's happening is we get input and we have a moment. We may not be aware of that moment, but there's a moment where we have the choice as to whether we consciously accept or reject a thought or someone's opinion or some incoming information. But we don't always know that we have a choice. Okay. So where this comes into play is with the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is like your powerhouse. This is where the magic happens. It's responsible for 90 to 97% of your mind's kind of capacity and ability, if you like. And this is why when we consciously want something and we're moving in this direction, and unconsciously we want something else, there's a different message. Our unconscious programming has such a massive impact. You think about it, there's 3 to 10% moving this way and 90 to 97% moving this way. Is it any wonder why our unconscious programming is going to make the difference? This is why we need to make sure that both of our minds are moving in the same direction. So our unconscious mind receives 32 million bits of information, roughly, every second. Now, if we were consciously aware of all of that information coming through our senses in every second, we would be useless, overwhelmed, heaps on the floor. And so what our unconscious mind does is it deletes and it filters out anything that we don't need to be aware of in the moment. So it might be aware of what could be perceived as a threat, for example, but otherwise it's only filtering into our awareness what we've told it is important. So it's filtering into your awareness, okay, this is how you're feeling in the seat. This is what Amber's saying. This is what you need to remember to do tomorrow, or whatever it is. But unconsciously, you're aware of so much more in terms of your unconscious mind. So until I bring it to your conscious awareness, you're maybe not aware of how your right armpit feels. And yet you are now, because your unconscious mind has brought it into your conscious awareness, or your left big toe. Your unconscious mind is aware of everything. And this is also where your autopilot system or your habits reside. So your unconscious mind can take over. This is why, for example, if you're driving, especially if you're driving somewhere familiar or an area that you know or a route that you know, you might kind of almost switch off while you're driving, and you might get to your destination, or you get to a place in your journey and you kind of realize and come to and go, I don't know how I got here. And it's because your unconscious mind has taken over. It's a familiar act to drive. It's a familiar act to drive this route. And so your unconscious mind has taken over. It also hears and records everything. So everything you say to yourself, everything you say about yourself, everything someone says to you, okay? Everything that you consciously choose to accept goes into your unconscious mind. Now, your unconscious mind does not question what comes into it. It doesn't ask if it's true. It doesn't ask if it's supportive. It just takes all 90 to 97% of its power to prove yourself right. So this is why it's so important to be aware of our self-beliefs and to, in as much as we can, make sure they're nurturing and supportive and empowering, because whatever we consciously choose to accept, our unconscious mind is just doing its job to fulfill that. And so when we have those beliefs that are positive and empowering and lift us rather than limit us, that's when our unconscious mind can just do its best work in a direction that we want to move in. So I trust that's resonating. I'd love to know, what's coming up for you as you hear this, or what are you realizing? Please feel free to share. So let's now talk a little bit about beliefs, because we often think that beliefs are truth or facts, and yet we aren't born with a set of beliefs. Yeah, we don't all believe the same things. You know, every day in this world, we see the differences in what happens when people believe different things. So we don't all believe the same things. So they're not truths. They're not facts. They're simply constructs. They're what we've decided something is or something means. And so we hold beliefs about ourselves, we hold beliefs about the world, we hold beliefs about what's possible for us. So for example, I had that memory belief about my memory, and it came from an experience that I had as a little girl at school, where I thought something had happened. I created an experience in my head of something that I thought I'd done. And so I thought it was my memory. But our unconscious mind doesn't actually know the difference between thinking about living something and actually living through it. So I created an image of me doing something and I was wrong and I got into trouble. And so I made a decision in that moment. I can't trust my memory. My memory will trick me. Okay. And this is where our self-beliefs come from. They're either given to us or we create them consciously or unconsciously by making decisions based on our interpretation of our world. But this is why it's so important to be aware of what we share with other people about what we think of them, what we think they're capable of. Children especially. Children don't realize usually that they have a choice about accepting or rejecting what someone tells them or not, or what someone tells them is true or not about them. Usually they're told something and they take it on as truth. That's who I am. That's what I'm capable of. That's something about me. And that's why we have such a responsibility with what we say to people and how we treat people, especially young people, about our opinions of them, what we think they're good at or not, what we think they're capable of, what's possible for them, because not everyone knows that they have a choice. You do now. And I hope you use that information for your greater good and other people's greater good. And finally, each belief that we have has behaviors attached to it that reinforce those beliefs, as I've said, and we need to be consistent with those beliefs. So let's now look at some limiting self-beliefs. Wendy says, I have a lot of negative self-talk. I call it my self-flagellation. Yeah, this is the thing. We can be really, really harsh with ourselves. And often when we look at it, the negative self-talk, it has a positive intention. Yeah. It's trying to serve us in some way. And if we ask ourselves, what's the positive intention of this self-criticism or this old belief, this negative or limiting self-belief, there's a positive intention that's usually about keeping us safe from something that we don't particularly want to feel, like failure or rejection or embarrassment or a lack of love or something. However, that positive intention can get wrapped up in the delivery. And so when we have sort of unresourceful, unsupportive self-talk, that awareness is brilliant because that's the starting point. Because then we can say, okay, well, if I was going to talk to myself as if I was someone that I loved and respected and cared for, how would I do it differently? So Wendy, thank you for sharing that, because I know a lot of people have a lot of negative self-talk. And this is, I trust, one of the reasons why you're here. So we're going to talk in a moment about limiting self-belief. Before we do, I really want to highlight the difference between I am and I do, okay? Because there might be something I do and I make it who I am. And this is really, really key, because anything that comes after I am is an identity statement. And so if something becomes my identity, I will fight to hold on to it. I will not let that be threatened, because I won't want to lose it. Because if I lose my identity, then who am I? Okay. And there's a big difference in energy and connection and releasability between a belief that is I am and something about what I do. So for example, I am an emotional eater has a different hold on me to emotional eating is something I do. I do eat for emotional reasons from time to time, for example, versus I am stubborn, or I do, sometimes resist change. I'm a commitment phobe. I do often hold myself back in relationships. I'm an idiot. I make mistakes sometimes. I'm a smoker versus I smoke. Okay. I trust you can hear the difference. I enjoy chocolate versus I'm a chocoholic. Okay. Once I take something that I do, a behavior, and I make it about who I am, remember, I have to prove myself right. So I have to then do the behaviors that reinforce that story. But if it's something that I do that creates a separation, there's a distance between me and the behavior. And that makes it so much easier to change because I'm not totally challenging who I am as a person. So when you want to release limiting self-beliefs, a really great place to start is to actually make the shift with your language. Notice whether it's an I am statement or it's an I do statement. Because shifting your language about how you talk about that belief and yourself in relation to that belief can give you some freedom to let it go even more. Let's now get into some examples though. So here are some examples of common limiting self-beliefs that I come across in client sessions. You might be familiar with them in terms of maybe what you hear your friends saying, what you say to yourself. And I'd like you to think, knowing what you know now, think about what kind of behaviors you would have to do to prove yourself right and be consistent with the story of these beliefs. I am lazy. I am a yo-yo dieter. Okay. How many of you have that belief? Because I suspect if you do, you are also fulfilling that prophecy of, I'm going to be really disciplined. I'm going to do X number of weeks and I'm going to be, use my willpower and I'm going to be clean eating and I'm going to exercise regularly and I'm going to do all the good things. And there's no pleasure in that. And I'm restricting and it's about deprivation. It's about lack. So then I get to this point where I'm like, I've had enough. And I get on the stuff it train back to ice cream town or chocolate town or wine town or cheese town or whatever it is. And I've been on that train. And it's because if I'm telling myself, well, I'm a yo-yo dieter or I always go up or down or my results never last, I have to prove myself right. Things like I'm never going to get to my goal. I'm not enough. I'm not worthy. If you have a belief around that in terms of low self-esteem, low self-value, then that will impact how much you value yourself and how worthy you feel you are of self-care, of making yourself a priority, of giving time and energy and focus to your goals. I'm my own worst enemy. You think about the kind of behaviors that you have to do in order to be your own worst enemy and to prove yourself right. And then sort of doing beliefs. I used to have one, I never drink enough water. So I'm telling my unconscious mind and my body, which my unconscious mind controls, never drink enough water, always talk yourself out of having any water, make sure that you're always dehydrated. Things like I can't live without cake. I can't live without chocolate. I can't live without wine. Your unconscious mind hears that and thinks, that's awful. We must make sure that we get some then. Otherwise we will die. Remember, your unconscious mind doesn't really have the ability to question or challenge. It just hears it. So it's going to try and preserve you. And you've just told it, I cannot live without this thing. Also, be aware of absolutes. Never, always, everything, every day. Everything always goes wrong for me. I had a lovely lady on a call a couple of days ago say, everyone is always disappointed in me. And so if you notice absolutes, I really encourage you to challenge them. Everyone? Really? Okay, no, not everyone. There's this person, this person. Always? Okay, no, not always. It's really, really important, when we've got these absolutes to create some spaciousness, to loosen our grip on them. Because if we're going to prove ourselves right, when we challenge our self-beliefs, we're also going to go looking for evidence to disprove that belief. And that's also a really great opportunity to create that little sort of that freedom and loosen the grip on it as well. So how do I apply this to myself? Let's do a little bit of reflection. Just for a couple of minutes, I'd like you to just kind of almost do a download of what are your most used self-beliefs. What do you say to yourself? What would I hear you say about yourself? And it could be related to health or any other area of your life. It could be related to your finances. You know, I'm a spender, I'm a saver. It could be about family, or I'm a stressed out parent, or I do my best for my family always. It could be about friendships. I'm a really great friend, or I'm careless with my food and nutrition. I'm diligent about measuring my portions with the portion perfection tools to make sure I'm eating for optimal health. I'm a terrible speller. I'm useless with numbers. Whatever it is, I want you to just download your most used self-beliefs. And then once you've done a download, just do a review and maybe a tick or a cross or an up arrow and a down arrow, just to highlight which ones might limit you and which ones might lift you when it comes to your progress towards your health goals. Wendy says, I hate exercise. And that's okay. Awesome honesty, Wendy. So I suspect that because you hate exercise and you tell yourself that you hate exercise, that maybe movement isn't a particularly big or important part in your life. So, for example, when we think about creating some flexibility, if it wasn't exercise and if it was just simply about moving your body in an enjoyable way, notice if that changes how you feel about it. If it wasn't about exercising to lose weight and it just became about I'm moving my body because my body is designed to move on a daily basis, and it really helps my body feel good and it helps my internal processes be efficient. Just noticing how our language can sometimes shift how we are perceiving something. Lynn says, how long or how many times do we have to put it in our unconscious mind before it becomes a tangible belief? That's a really good question. It could happen once. Yeah. Once we consciously accept it and go, that's true, that can then become a belief, because it's something that our unconscious mind hears and goes, oh, okay, we've accepted that. And because of the way our minds work, we have a part, it's like a hook in our brain. It's called the reticular activated system, and it will look for and filter into our awareness anything that we've told it is important. So this is why, for example, if you're on the market for a new car, all of a sudden you'll see the particular make and model of the car that you're interested in everywhere. If, for example, you've been pregnant, you'll probably start to notice pregnant women everywhere. Those cars, those pregnant women, they've always been there, but all of a sudden you are super aware of them because your mind will filter into your awareness what you've said it's important. So if you accept a thought and say, this is a new belief, then your mind will filter into your awareness evidence from around you that that is true. Okay, trust that makes sense, Lynn. Hope it answers your question. All right, so I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes. Do your reflections, download, and then mark which ones might limit you or lift you. And pop any questions. And also, please feel free to share as well in the chat. You know, what are some of your limiting beliefs and so on. Right, I'm going to go quiet and let you actually think.
Amber, can I chat with you now during this little break? I was interested in, you know, the concept of we're really programmed to move away from pain and towards pleasure. I've always wondered from speaking with clients whether the stronger motivation in weight loss has been get away from pain. You know, I'm not happy with where I am, get me out of here. But there isn't a strong move to identifying the pleasure that they're headed for. And so once the pain decreases, the motivation decreases.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So what can happen is when we're not, so say, for want of better description, it's sort of like there's pain associated with being overweight, for example. And if my focus is only just on getting away from that, like you said, as soon as I am far enough away from the original pain, but I don't know where I'm going, then I will go back to usually, or head towards back to what's familiar. And there's a few things going on there in terms of my next point after this reflection as well. But also because we can also be wired in a way whereby some of us are more away motivated and some of us are more towards motivated.
Okay.
And ideally what we want is both. We want kind of the away motivation because it gives us the fire in the belly and it gives us the kick up the bum, and we feel propelled away. But we have to know our desired destination, and we ideally do want to make that super exciting and super compelling so that we are drawn like a magnet towards it. The analogy we use, I think, for the Get Back on Track program is, you know, if you imagine a plane takes off from Sydney and it's told basically just don't go to Sydney, stay away from Sydney. Well, that plane will take off from Sydney and it will fly around and it might just, you know, wander about and head off in different directions. And at some point it will need to refuel. And so it will land somewhere random. It won't be Sydney. It could be somewhere lovely. It could be somewhere not so lovely. And that's often sort of how we approach our goals, if you like. It's like, I know what I don't want, so I'll move away from that, but I don't know where I'm actually going to end up. And so that's why we can find that, you know, someone might be doing, they might know, I don't want to be overweight, I don't want to be uncomfortable, I don't want to be embarrassed, you know, I just want to move away from that. And so they take action, but they can end up somewhere that is often better, but also not necessarily compelling enough to keep them there, if you like. Whereas if a pilot takes off from Sydney and has a clear destination, right, I want you to fly to Hawaii, then no matter how many times it gets blown off track, that pilot will still be on track for Sydney because it knows its desired destination. But ideally, for Hawaii, but ideally we want to make sure that the destination, like you said, is really compelling and exciting, and there's a lot of pleasure involved. And this is why I said at the beginning, you know, often it's like, hey, let's figure out the goal. And then often what happens is people then figure out what are the actions I need to take to get me to my goal. But the second step is actually, why do you want it? Figure out why you want to achieve that goal. What's it going to give you? How's it going to make what's important in your life even better? How's it going to serve you in that way? Because when you've got a really, really powerful why, that amps up the pleasure, but it also amps up the meaning. So you're more likely to keep going. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great. So would you say that in terms of trying to create that that moving towards pleasure, that you need to identify what is pleasurable about that destination and experience it, focus on the experience of it regularly? Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. So focusing on, it's really good to poke the pain, you know, what do I want to move away from? But then, yeah, figuring out where you want to go, why you want it, what's it going to give you, amp up the pleasure. And well, it's gone out of my head now, but it's also really important to make sure that your journey there is going to be kind of unimpeded. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. We want to amp up the pleasure. We ideally want both, not just one, not just the plane. Oh, what I was going to say is often when we first start talking to clients, they are really clear on what they don't want and what they want to move away from. Yeah. And then not so clear what they want to move towards. And so that's actually the first part of when we do a one-on-one wellness vision session, is actually helping the client figure out, okay, what do you actually want? What do you want to move towards? So then also they're sending that message to their unconscious mind. This, you know, this is where we're going. This is the destination we want. So using the power of their unconscious mind to propel them forwards rather than backwards.
Fabulous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So Teresa says, I have a question. What if you can't figure out the goal? I feel like that is the hardest part. Sometimes if you don't know, if you're very clear on what you want and you're not so clear on if you're very clear on what you don't want and you're not so clear on what you do want, sometimes the best place to start is to say, so for example, say, I don't want to be stressed anymore. Okay, well, if you weren't feeling stressed, how would you be feeling instead? How would you like to feel? Or thinking about what's the opposite of stress. Okay, so do you want to feel calm? Okay, well, yeah, I suppose I want to feel calm, and I'd like to feel more peaceful at times, and so on. So it's almost like using what you know you don't want and flipping it. So if you weren't stressed, if you didn't have unwanted excess weight, what would you have instead? And just kind of asking yourself those questions and then exploring that as well. So I trust that answers the question a little bit. We have resources to help with that at the end. All right. So feel free to share in the chat what you came up with, some of your most used self-beliefs, the ones that limit you, the ones that lift you. And I'll keep going just because I'm mindful of time. But yeah, please do feel free to share what comes up for you, what came out of your reflection. So this is the piece that I also wanted to add when Amanda and I were just having that conversation. A really useful exercise can be to connect into the beliefs that your desired future self holds. So most of you will have a goal around what you want. And so taking the time to do some reflection and go forward into that future version of you, that desired version of you, and see what beliefs that version of you has about themselves, about their health, about food, about movement, about self-care, about their self-esteem, all of those aspects, who they are, what is their life about. Because this is why it's so important. That future version of you cannot hold the same beliefs that the current version of you holds at the moment. Because if that future version of you did, you would already be that version of you. Does that make sense? The reason why or the main reason, there could be other reasons, I am generalizing here. One of the most powerful reasons why you don't have the results that you want yet, if you don't, again, I'm assuming, if you don't have the results that you want yet with your health, with your weight, it will usually be because you don't yet hold the beliefs that that future version of you holds. Because that future version of you's beliefs are driving their feelings, their actions, their results. So to be the kind of person who gets those results, you need to hold a particular set of beliefs. The beliefs that you currently hold, there's a mismatch between these beliefs and these beliefs. So this is why if you achieve a goal but don't change your beliefs and the beliefs that you hold about yourself, that you'll usually end up back where you started or back with different results. Or if you almost get there and then get pulled back, it's because there's a gap. Your beliefs need to be aligned to who you want to be. And then you continue to prove yourself right. So if you're not sure what beliefs you need to have, hang out with this version of you. Go hang out with this version of you. Feel into them. What do they believe is true? Who do they believe they are? What do they believe about life and health and all the aspects in their world? And that will guide you as to what are the beliefs you need to have in order to get their results and become that person. And I trust that makes sense. Give me a little bit of an indication or a comment, any aha moments, insights, let me know. Wendy says, other negative feelings. I keep failing and now I feel I will always fail. I procrastinate a lot and I feel overwhelmed often. I'm sorry to hear that, Wendy, because that is a challenge, and that isn't necessarily easy. However, the overwhelm will be coming from thoughts as well. Procrastination is often when we're trying to avoid the pain we associate with getting the thing done, for example. And if you've got a sort of some self-talk around, I feel I will always fail, or I will always fail, then I would really encourage you to start to challenge that. Think about changing that, because if you hold on to that belief, then you'll keep proving yourself right. And this is what we're saying. So Julie says, where does willpower fit into what you're saying? Okay, so this is probably a topic for a whole new webinar. So willpower is within us. It's not something that kind of turns up. We can generate willpower, and we can have willpower and determination. However, it is finite, and so it does run out. There's something called decision fatigue, whereby, thanks, Wendy, whereby the later on in the day, the more decisions that we've had to make, tiny decisions, you know, what to wear, whether to look at that notification, whether to respond to that email or not, whether to buy that thing or not. At the end of the day, our ability to make decisions decreases, and we get to a point where we will seek the easy option rather than trying to decide. The easy option is usually do nothing or choose the most familiar kind of route, the route that doesn't feel challenging. And so when we're relying on our willpower, we're also relying on our decision-making sort of energy. And this is why willpower will be generally good for maybe a 4-week challenge or a 12-week challenge. But because we're relying on willpower rather than balancing our internal pain and pleasure, and making sure that we're still giving ourselves support in terms of the way we're living in order to lean into the challenge of creating the healthy lifestyle habits, that's why we often end up on that stuff it train back to whatever town it is, because willpower does run out. So we're supporting ourselves a lot more by changing the programming at the unconscious level rather than relying on willpower, which is conscious. So willpower is in the conscious mind, and habits are in the unconscious mind. And ideally, we want to be creating habits rather than relying on willpower, because willpower runs out, it's finite, it requires us to keep looking for it, keep creating it. Whereas habits, they're unconscious, we don't have to think about them. I don't have to think about how to shower myself, how to brush my teeth, how to turn a light on or off, how to drive the car, how to put my walking shoes on and walk my dog. It's automatic. Does that make sense, Julie? Hopefully that answers your question. So let's now get into a little bit about ways to change your self-beliefs. So first, thanks, Julie. I'm glad that helped. One of the best ways to change your self-beliefs is affirmations, i.e. new self-beliefs. And so if you're sitting there thinking, oh, affirmations, that's a bit woo-woo, that's a bit wishy-washy, what I'd like to point out to you is that your current limiting self-beliefs are affirmations. They are beliefs and statements that you say about yourself and think about yourself. So you're already using affirmations. So I invite you to maybe use more supportive affirmations instead. So when we create affirmations that are aligned to our future self, that's when we're starting to really hit the road in terms of creating beliefs that are moving us towards where we want to go, but also making sure that we are changing that unconscious programming. So some points about affirmations: they need to be positive, okay? Because the unconscious mind cannot process a negative. If I say, don't think of a blue hippo with red spots, you have to think of a blue hippo with red spots before you can decide to not think of a blue hippo with red spots. So when we're talking about what we don't want, yeah, I'm not falling off track. I'm not lazy. All our unconscious mind hears is, I'm falling off track. I'm lazy. Okay, so we want our affirmations to be positive in terms of what I want. So I'm building my healthy lifestyle every day. I make decisions to support my health every day. I'm an action taker. So not I'm no longer overeating, but I use my portion perfection tools to measure my portions for every meal. Not I have no willpower, but I can achieve anything I set my mind to. We also want them to be in the present tense, because if we use I will be, so I will be fit and healthy, I will be energetic, I will be a regular walker. Will be is always going to be in the future. Okay, it's like a destination I never arrive at. So we want them to be in the present tense. I am right now. I do right now. And ideally, you can use them as a regular habit. You can say them in the shower every morning, or say them every morning or every night. Google for inspiration. You can get affirmations for any area of your life. There's amazing resources out there. There's an app called I Am that also sends you affirmations that reinforce particular areas of your life you want to change. And if you feel like you're getting some resistance, so if you say to yourself, I am fit and I am energetic, and there's a part of you or an inner voice that goes, that's not true, I don't feel like that, then one way to get around that resistance is to use I am becoming. Every day I am becoming healthier and fitter. Every day I am moving closer and closer to my energetic, healthy self. Every day I am becoming even better at using my portion perfection tools. Every day I am becoming more calm, more peaceful, more mindful with my food, with my movement. I'm becoming better at self-care, and so on and so on. Lynn says, I have a lot of empathy and can help others trying to lose weight, but I struggle to put what I tell others into use in myself. So you might need an affirmation around that, Lynn. Yeah, I am amazing at following my own advice about weight management, or something like that. All right, we can also use the way our mind works. So our mind works in pictures and sounds, and we can use this to our advantage. So what I want to take you through now is just a quick little process to help you let go of an unwanted old belief, just so that you can see what's possible. So I want you to take that list of beliefs that you did in your reflection, and I want you to just pick one, maybe the one that's kind of yelling the loudest or causing the most trouble at the moment. Just pick one. It doesn't matter which one. You can always re-listen to this and do it for any of the others. Just picking one. I'm going to assume you've picked one. Feel free to share in the chat what you've picked. And I want you to just ask yourself, on a scale of 0 to 10 right now, just notice how true that belief feels for you right now. It might be a number that comes into your head, or that you hear, or that you get the sense of a number, but just trusting what number that comes up. How true does that feel for you right now on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is it's 100% true? And you might like to just pop the number in to the chat, just so we can see how strong those beliefs are for you. Just popping some numbers in. You don't have to share the belief, just how true is it for you? So Amy says 8. Thank you, Amy. Wendy says mine's a 10. Awesome. So we're going to really see some decreases. Just keeping a few more. I trust that you're going to be popping them into the chat. So thank you for sharing so far. So when you think about that belief, I want you to notice the movie that plays in your mind, or the image that's associated with that belief. So closing your eyes if it's easier for you. If you sometimes find visualization challenging, just noticing what there is to notice about what's associated with that belief. And also just noticing what you're hearing with that picture or that movie, and also any feelings associated with that image or that movie that's associated with that old unwanted belief. And so now what I invite you to do is listen to me and follow along with my instructions. I'm going to assume you're happy to follow along. If you're not, that's okay. You just ignore me for the next few minutes. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to bring up that image or that movie that's associated with that old unwanted belief that you're ready to let go of and reduce in terms of truth. Because we're going to make some changes, okay, so that you can start to let go of this old unwanted belief even more easily and effortlessly. So firstly, if it's a color image or movie, I want you to make it black and white now. If it's already black and white, keep it as black and white, but I want you to make it black and white now. That's it. And now I want you to turn the lights down on this image or movie so that the lights are really, really dim and dark. Do that now. That's it. And now I want you to take the clarity of this image or this movie, and I want you to make it grainy or blurred or scratched out. I really want you to make it hard to see the detail. Very good. And now if it's a moving image, I want you to make it still. Make it a freeze frame. That's it. And now I want you to fold it in half, and fold it in half, and fold it in half again, and fold it in half again, and fold it in half again. And now I want you to put it in the bottom right-hand corner of your visual field and send it shooting off into the distance. I want you to push it off into the distance so it becomes a teeny, teeny, tiny speck, far, 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 far away. And I want you to lock it in all the way over there. And now I want you to notice the sounds that are associated with this movie or this image. And I want you to turn them down. Turn the volume right down so that it's silent. That's it. And now just noticing the feelings that were associated with this old image or movie. Just notice where in your body you feel them. Notice their size, their shape, any color, temperature that they have. Just noticing what there is to notice about these feelings. And now what I want you to do is take these feelings and push them out of your body, like pop them out so they're outside of your body, and then send them to me all the way. I'm all the way over on the East Coast between Brisbane and Sydney. Send them shooting off all the way to me. I want them over here. And lock that in. Well done. And now coming back into the room, I want you just to notice when you think of that old belief, just notice how true that feels for you on a scale of 0 to 10 now. And just type in the number or put up your hand, give me a wave if it went down. Now that's just one strategy. It can take different times. It can take a number of times. It can be different strategies for different people. Using the way your mind works can create some spaciousness to make some changes. So Marnie's giving me a wave. Awesome, Marnie. I'm so happy for you. Well done. And you can also use the way your mind works to install a new belief, make it stronger. So generally, Megan's got a thumbs up too. Awesome. So when we take an image associated with a belief that we want to have stronger, so you maybe want a belief around I'm a mindful eater, for example. You create an image to go with that belief and then make it brighter. So you might turn the colors up, but turn the lights up, and you make it bigger and you bring it closer. Those three things generally will amplify the intensity of the image and how true it is for you, if you like, because of the way that our minds work. So just a bit of a different little strategy there for you to kind of see what's possible. Other ways to change your self-beliefs. So actively challenging the old disempowering beliefs when they pop up mentally or they pop up in your language is really effective. You want to interrupt that old patterning because it's at the moment habitual, and we want to interrupt it. It's like scratching a record. We want to interrupt it enough times so that we stop being able to run that automatic response. So you can literally, when you hear it, when you say it to yourself, say cancel, cancel, delete, delete. That's an old story. Now I believe this, and you have a replacement belief, the opposite of the belief, if you like. Like I said before, looking for evidence to disprove that belief, looking for evidence to reinforce the new belief. Yeah, I might have an old belief that I'm not motivated enough to exercise, and so I might want to change how I feel about it and change what I believe about it. And I might have a belief that I want to reinforce, that I'm as motivated as I choose to be, or I can find motivation within myself whenever I need to. And so then I will look for evidence to support that new belief. Okay, well, I'll be motivated to walk my dog regardless of the weather. And if it's a work project, I'll be motivated to finish it and make it happen. And so the more we look for that evidence, the more we can go, yeah, that is true. There is truth to this new belief. And now I can send that instruction to my unconscious mind to look for further evidence. Wendy says, I think I'm getting it. Woo! Awesome. And look, this is going to be recorded. Amanda's going to send it out. You can watch this as much as you like. And repetition is the key as well. You watch this in a week's time, you're going to get new insights, new realizations, new shifts. These are the principles that I've been using for 13 years, and I get them on a different level every time I revisit or use them. We're never done. This is, us changing and evolving as we go. And then finally, and it's not the last strategy, but it's the last strategy I'm going to talk about tonight, is hypnosis. So I'm going to be sharing a clearing limiting beliefs hypnosis with Amanda for her to share with you when the recording comes out. And what I want to say about hypnosis, there's information about hypnosis that will be available. What I want to highlight to you about hypnosis is that hypnosis is a trance-like state that you put yourself in. So it's not something that someone can do to you. So for example, when I talked about, when we're driving and we kind of switch off, but we're still driving, that's us being in a trance-like hypnotic state. When you're watching TV or a movie and you're so absorbed and then all of a sudden there's a noise and you jump, that's you being in a hypnotic trance-like state. It's a state between sleep and wakefulness that is natural, and also that can only be done by you, for you. And so what happens when we're in a hypnotic trance-like state, when we're super relaxed, is that our minds, our unconscious minds, the doors open and we become much more receptive to suggestion. And so this limiting beliefs hypnosis is my voice suggesting releasing of old limiting beliefs to create some freedom for you, to assist you with that programming at that unconscious level. And the more times you listen to it, the more effect it has. So that's my gift to you, to thank you for joining me this evening. And I trust that it will help you and give you value as well. So in terms of next steps, just something to think about before we finish up, just having a little think about what are the actions you commit to taking over the next week that will support you to move more easily towards your desired outcomes. Are you going to listen to the hypnosis? Are you going to choose some affirmations? Are you going to do some further reflections? Something else. Keeping it really small and achievable as well. You don't need to revamp everything. Just keep one or two steps that's going to move you forward. I encourage you to look out for the follow-up email from Amanda. It's going to have the webinar recording and the slides. It's going to have the hypnosis. It's also going to have a discount code for our Get Back on Track program and some details about how to access further support if you want. So our Get Back on Track program is a 5-week online program for anyone struggling with motivation, self-sabotage, or unwanted weight gain. Now, because we work with bariatric patients, there are, yes, references to weight loss surgery in there. However, I guarantee and promise all the content is relevant to anyone, regardless of whether or not they've had weight loss surgery, because what we're talking about in the program is behavioral change, mindset change translating to behavioral change, inner change creating outer change. So there's modules on motivation, limiting beliefs. You get to revisit what we've spoken about tonight with a little bit more detail, beating cravings and emotional eating, creating a healthy lifestyle, strategies for staying on track, and then there's some bonus audios. And what I've arranged with Amanda is it's usually $395. It's yours for half price, $197 if you use the discount code at the checkout. So make sure you check out that follow-up email. Wendy has said the biggest one for me will be to become actually self-aware of when I'm applying the negative thoughts. Yeah, and it's a muscle. Yeah, it's a muscle. It takes practice. But the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm only slightly over time. And thank you so much for joining me this evening. Please do feel free to ask any questions about anything I've covered. Marnie says, thank you, Amber. I've gained some important insights and things to think about. I've really enjoyed this webinar. You're so welcome, Marnie. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Amber, that was really powerful. I really loved just how simple and sensible and doable those ideas and strategies were, even though it might seem overwhelming to somebody to change their identity or their beliefs. Just to take a step is a success.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree. It's like, keep it small, keep it achievable. Just start with something, because that's still change and that's going to have an impact. So yeah, absolutely. You're very, very welcome. I'm very grateful for all the lovely messages that are coming up as well. So thank you. Thanks for being such a great audience and for letting me share and get enthusiastic at you.
Fantastic. Okay. As you say, repetition is the key. So that's it for this session. There's been some great comments and questions in the chat. Thank you so much for your time, Amber. This has been so valuable. And I can really see people gaining something from this evening. I'll send around Amber's contacts, the extra resources that she's very kindly made available to us, along with the recording link. So we shall say good night to Amber. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks so much. Take care. Thanks, everybody.
And if you find value in these sessions, then please spread the word. I get to attend a lot of professional conferences where I get to meet some of the best minds in the business, like Amber. And my goal is to bring their great ideas along with mine to you. The larger the audience, the greater the interest speakers have in joining us. If you want to support us, check out our products and services at greatideas.net.au or on Amazon in the US, and/or refer a friend. All they need to do is make a purchase or download a freebie from our website, and they'll get onto the invitation list for these webinars. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram too at Portion Perfection. Thank you for joining me for this very interesting discussion, and I'll see you next time.